On to Sri Lanka now. Just how bad can the economic crisis get? Every day we see a new low. Today was no different. Sri Lanka has started rationing fuel. Starting today, motorcycles can get just 4 litres of fuel per visit. Three-wheelers can get just 5 litres every time they refill. Cars, vans and SUVs, a little more than 19 litres. That's all they can get. Even with the daily cap, there is no guarantee people will be able to get fuel because most fuel stations are out of fuel. The fuel stations that are still open have to deal with long queues. Nothing explains the crisis in Sri Lanka better than the situation at the fuel stations. People have died waiting for fuel in long queues. Since last month, at least 8 deaths have been recorded.
Sri Lanka Ceylon Petroleum Corporation today announced officially that it is planning to ration fuel across the country. However, many fuel stations run by the CPC, as you can see right behind me, has run out of petrol and diesel. Nevertheless, citizens across the country, in a desperate move, are even willing to stand in line for hours, at times even exceeding 2 hours, to obtain the bare minimum of fuel here in the country. Sri Lanka has been reporting shortages of not only fuel but also of gas and certain commodities over the past few months due to its worsening economic crisis.
There is a shortage of cooking gas as well. Sri Lanka's main gas retailer, Litrogas, is completely out of stock. It has stopped supplying. The company says it hopes to resume the supply on Monday. The chairman of Litrogas has resigned. His name is Theshara Jayasinghe. He is considered to be a strong ally of the Rajapaksas. The bigger worry, however, is the serious shortage of medicines. Doctors around the country have been issuing dire warnings. Sri Lanka imports 80% of its drugs. The government provides 2,500 drugs to the state-run hospitals. Out of this, 60 medicines are completely out of stock. 20 of these are life-saving drugs. As of last week, another 140 essential drugs are in short supply. The Sri Lankan government also owes money to suppliers of medical goods. How much? Almost $13 million. Reports say the World Bank has agreed to provide an immediate grant of $10 million. This is exclusively for the purchase of drugs. But these funds may not be enough. There are 2 reasons. 1, Sri Lanka has devalued its currency. 2, the high rate of inflation. The cost of medical supplies has already increased by 30 to 40%. One can survive without petrol for a few days, but the shortage of drugs could create a dangerous situation. It can put lives at risk. What does Sri Lanka need to stabilize supplies? At least $3 billion. That's what Colombo plans to demand from the International Monetary Fund. The meeting is next week. Sri Lanka wants an immediate release of funds, and it wants the IMF to get involved on another issue: the negotiations with the creditors. Sri Lanka wants them to settle the debts for less. Colombo may ask investors to take a loss. How much loss? 50% on interest payments and another 20% on the principal. Perhaps Sri Lanka wants the IMF's help to convince the creditors. Sri Lanka's Finance Minister, Ali Sabri, had a message for them. I'm quoting, "If you have been part of our prosperity and made money out of it, when we are not doing well, you need to take some sort of a haircut." That's going to be a long, protracted discussion. So will the creditors pay for the mistakes of the Rajapaksa government? We will have to see how the discussions with the IMF pan out next week, but it will not be a pleasant conversation, that's for sure. You see, the IMF will not just hand out a check to Sri Lanka. It will seek commitment towards tangible reforms, perhaps even guarantors. Colombo could be looking towards New Delhi for some assistance. The Sri Lankan government has made a diplomatic outreach. First, the Sri Lankan High Commissioner met with India's Finance Minister in New Delhi. Next week, the Sri Lankan Finance Minister is expected to be in Washington. Reports say he will be meeting with the members of the Indian delegation on the sidelines. New Delhi has already dropped a hint. It might extend more financial aid to Colombo. We will know more next week, and we will be tracking all these developments. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.